Ever since getting into mobile gaming, there's been a few things that I've wanted to check out. I've been having a lot of fun with my ROG Ally and all my other handhelds recently this year. Sometimes though, it is nice to have a bigger screen, and there's one thing that's been on my list to check out ever since getting into this hobby. However, I was kind of overwhelmed with choice, and I think there was a little too many options in this regard. I've been wanting to check out a portable monitor, but as mentioned, there's just too many options. So when UPERFECT sent me an email saying that they wanted to send over their monitor for me to take a look at, I said sure. Let's take a closer look and see what they sent over. I've been really interested to try one of these. I think these would be really cool to take on vacation or even camping. This one seems to be a really good match for high-end x86 devices like the ROG Ally or maybe a mini PC. What makes this one special compared to the other ones? Let's take a closer look at their website and see exactly what this portable monitor is. Under their gaming line, the one that they decided to send to me was the K118. This one is currently on sale for $279.99. One thing I am a little worried about is the portability factor with an 18-inch monitor. This is a pretty big screen. Having 2560 by 1600 resolution on an 18-inch screen with 144 Hz and FreeSync, I had to check it out. The screen also does support HDR, but from the screens that I've tried, HDR just really hasn't looked very nice, but I'll check it out to see what it looks like. I have an LG ultra wide right now, and it's a pretty high-end monitor, but the HDR on it doesn't really look very good either. This also says it supports 100% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, so we can take a closer look to see how vibrant the colors are. FreeSync is definitely a nice feature to have though, especially on a portable monitor. The response time is 9 milliseconds, which is pretty standard for an IPS screen. We are getting only 300 nits of brightness, which isn't too bad. I wish this was a little brighter though. Usually about 400 to 500 nits is kind of where I like. There's no built-in battery on this either, so you're going to have to bring a battery with you just to power this screen. You can also power the screen through the device itself. This will only work with the USB-C devices. The two bigger screens are also made out of aluminum. They do also have speakers in them too. It should also come with a case cover, so that's nice to carry it around with. And the screen requires 12 watts of power. This has two USB-Cs for audio and video input, and it has one mini HDMI. This also has a 3.5mm aux input, and this comes with quite a lot of stuff in the box too. Since this was sent over by FedEx, this was a really fast delivery. So for $279 is this monitor worth it? I don't know, but let's open it up and find out. As mentioned, this was sent over to me by UPERFECT, but they're not saying this review beforehand. All opinions are my own, and I'm just going to give you guys my honest thoughts to what I think about it. Let's take a closer look at the monitor. The box was packaged pretty good. It does have a pretty plain box though, and it just says portable monitor. It doesn't even have the model number or anything on the front. This might be a way for them to keep down the costs if they just ship them all out in the same boxes. This is definitely the biggest product that I've ever unboxed on the channel. Let's take this out and see what else is in the box first. In the box, we find the user manual. This is going to tell you everything about the monitor that you're going to need to know. In the box here, we have a simple power brick, but it does support 30-watt quick charging. And these are the specifications on the power adapter. We do also have some cables. There's two USB-C to USB-C cables, and we have that HDMI cable as well. It's nice that they threw these in because these are usually a couple bucks extra. Let's set aside the box and take a closer look at the screen. This is the screen itself, and it comes pre-attached with this little carrying case. It has a nice little stand built into it, so you can use that to hold it up. On the one side, we have one of the speakers. On the bottom of the monitor, there's nothing to report. And on the other side, we have those two USB ports, the headphone jack, and the HDMI port. There's also the menu button. This kind of reminds me of the one that's on the FPGA Game Boy Color. You can go up and down on it, and you can push it in. This feels a little plasticky, but hopefully it should do its job. On the other side of the screen, there's a mounting bracket. You can kind of see the back of the screen. This is kind of interesting because I was really curious to see how solid these were. The back of this screen does feel a little hollow, and that kind of has me worried, but hopefully it should be okay. This is all completely made out of aluminum though, so it is a pretty sturdy build all around. And there's the screen itself. Pretty plain, there's nothing on the bezels, and the bezels are pretty small. These bezels only come out to about 5.4 millimeters on each side. The bottom bezel sits at around 11.6 millimeters. This screen comes in at 1.04 kilograms, or about 2.3 pounds. I don't think this is a bad weight, and it is still quite easy to pick it up and carry it around. It is quite big though. So the screen's all set up. Now I just need something to test it on. Let's try the 35XX I'm going to connect this using AOHI's 240 watt power charging cable. I wanted to make sure power wasn't a limitation here. This is connected to the AOHI Starship battery bank. I got the RG35XX connected, but the screen's not powering on, so we probably have to turn it on first. Let's hold down the side button here and see if anything comes up. Nope, nothing. So I wonder why it's not working. What I've done was I used their HDMI cable and I connected it to this U-green adapter, which was connected to the SP. It should have enough power though, so I'm not sure why it's not turning on. Maybe it just doesn't support these adapters. The SP's on though, so let's try connecting it one more time. It does seem to want to connect because as soon as I plug it in, the screen goes off, just like it would when connecting to my TV. Let's try the Odin 2 Mini. This is USB-C to USB-C, so this one should work. This one does seem to work. It is a little dim though, especially with my bright studio lights, so let me see if I can brighten this up a little bit. Let's pull up the menu. Can't really see that. Let's go down to the brightness option. I believe this is brightness here. Yes, so this is the dimmest it'll go. Well, that's not bad. I'm going to bump up the contrast to 6. So on the main options, we have the brightness, contrast, there's eco mode, looks like standard, game, photo, and video. I'm going to set this to game mode just so we get the lowest latency. It does seem to change the colors a little bit though, doesn't it? Standard mode looks a lot more vibrant. Might have to leave it on standard mode. I'll leave it on standard just for now. There's also DCR. I believe this adjusts the contrast on the fly, so we can turn that on or we can just shut that off. As you can see, that does seem to adjust it a little bit too much. I'm going to leave that off. You probably don't want too much sharpness. I'm just going to turn this down to 1. So to open the menu, you would press it once. You can use the down and up on this little knob to navigate it. To select the option or enter the menu, just push it in again. Color temp is set to sRGB, or you can change it to these other 2 modes. I'm just going to leave this to sRGB. There's also hue, saturation. There's also a blue light filter. You can also turn FreeSync on or off. I'm just going to leave this on. I'm not sure how well this is going to play with Android devices though, so we might have to shut this off. Doesn't look like you can leave the FreeSync option on. You'll probably have to adjust this depending on what you're playing. The brightness options do seem to reset as well once you change the input, so that's kind of odd. Hopefully that remembers it in the future. There's a volume option down here as well. On the other menu, we have the language. There's a display mode. There's HDR setting, aspect ratio, and then just a reset for everything else. On the very bottom menu is the input, and it's just automatically set to auto select by default. I would just leave this here because then it's just going to detect whatever has the input. This is pretty cool actually to see this on a big screen like this. And the colors don't look too bad either. To adjust the volume, you don't need to enter the menu. All you have to do is just press up or down on the switch and it'll turn that up or down. I do think this is pretty cool though. I think this is something that I would take with me if I was to go out of town for the weekend and I just wanted a bigger screen to play my games on. Of course, you do have to bring a power bank or a USB cable as well, so that makes it a little less portable. It does look really nice on here too, and in the dark, this screen would probably look a lot better. Let's check out some other devices just to see what else runs on here. The Retroid Pocket 4 Pro seems to work right away. I think Beacon looks really nice on here though. Retro games do look really good on this screen too. I just connected this to my Legion Go, and it does seem to work really well with Windows, but then again, it just lost that brightness setting again. So far, that is the only thing that I'm not liking about this screen. Let's see if we can get the full 2560 by 1600 that they advertise. So on the Legion, I can get the 2560 by 1600 over the USB-C. If I go under the display settings, I am getting the full 144 Hz, which is really nice to see. To me anyways, as I'm looking at this, moving around, it does appear to be very smooth. This is definitely 144 Hz. does say it supports 10-bit, but when I go up to 10-bit, it immediately jumps back down to 8. So it looks like over a full RGB anyways, the highest bitrate I can get for this panel is 8-bit. Something else that I really like to check on new screens is to make sure that everything is functioning correctly. This is the website that I use to check it. It's called ISO Monitor Test, and I highly recommend checking it out if you get a new screen. So I'm going to go start the test, then I'm going to take a quick peek around the screen to see if I notice any issues. I also had a quick peek around the screen and I couldn't find any dead pixels. However, depending on the screen layout, you might notice dead pixels on other colors, so it's worth going through a few different colors just to see if there's anything else that doesn't look right. All these other colors look very vibrant, and I'm not seeing any dead pixels on red. Green looks very vibrant and colorful, and I don't see any dead pixels on there either. And blue looks also very vibrant, and there's no dead pixels on blue either. Gray uniformity on this panel is also excellent, and I'm not seeing any banding or anything significant. This corner looks pretty good too, but my light is getting in the way a little bit of showing you that. However, this does look pretty good, and I don't see any issues with the screen so far. Overall, there's no dead pixels, gray uniformity looks good, and all the colors look very vibrant. In fact, that little corner that I thought was light bleeding just appears to be my light. If I put my hand over top, you can see that it looks absolutely fine. The response times on this screen are excellent as well, and I'm not seeing any ghosting. This is likely due to the screen using 144 Hz. Regardless, everything looks good, and I'm pretty impressed with the panel so far. To show you the true capabilities of this panel, I also want to shut off the lights just so you can see how sharp and vibrant this actually is. With all the lights shut off, this is definitely showing some really good colors. The black levels are excellent, and it's extremely sharp. There's a lot of detail, but the colors just, wow, look at the color. I think this is the thing that's just blowing me away with this screen, is just the color accuracy and how vibrant this actually is. But the black levels are also really good for an IPS screen. As someone that's never tried a portable monitor before, the color accuracy and vibrancy is pretty impressive. That's not bad in the dark, and you can definitely see how nice and vibrant this panel really is. When you're connected to a game that plays HDR, all the controls are going to be pretty much off. You're not going to be able to control anything. Armored Core fires a Rubicon defaults to HDR. So let's see what exactly this looks like with HDR on. So for me anyways, I find HDR just a tad dark. I don't personally like this, and I think I would just stick to SDR. Thankfully, you can shut this off with games like this, and if I shut this off, the screen is going to get much brighter. I think it's nice that they have HDR, but in practicality, it doesn't really mean much because it's just not bright enough. This is very similar to most mid-range monitors in the fact that they just don't get enough brightness to actually show HDR correctly. SDR is bright enough, and under most regular lighting conditions, that shouldn't be an issue. Even under bright studio lights, this game is still extremely playable. As far as the audio quality goes, it does sound a little hollow and tinny. I think this will get by in a pinch, but you do have that 3.5mm headphone jack you can plug a set of speakers into. This doesn't support power pass-through, so even if I have the power plugged in through this, and this is plugged into my device, this isn't going to go through and charge the actual handheld. This means that if you have a device that has 2 USB ports, you'll probably be fine because you can output one to display and one to charging. The only device that I currently have that does that though is the Legion Go. So I can't do that with the ROG Ally that I currently have. I could do that with the ROG Ally X, but not the regular ROG Ally. I also just want to see what's going to happen if I unplug this, because I think most of the power, if not all the power, is just being pulled from the device. This means the device is going to drain even quicker. So I'm going to unplug this and we're going to see what's going to happen. Nothing. All the power from this is being supplied from the handheld itself. As long as you're using this just for regular games though, and in standard SDR, I think you'll be pretty happy with it. It looks pretty good and it's bright enough for me. The screen is also not getting hot at all. It's slightly warm at the bottom, but I don't think that's hot by any means. Again, just to reiterate that this light bleeding at the top is not actually light bleeding. That is just my studio lights. And unfortunately, just with how small of a filming setup I have, I can't seem to show this correctly. This is kind of cool though. I think if you were to go out of town or if you wanted to go camping or something, you could get something like this and just bring it with you. It's a pretty nice screen. It's a shame that I can only get USB-C working. That's kind of weird. It's been a few weeks now, and the reason it's been so long is I've been waiting for a replacement. I reached out to UPERFECT and they sent me this, which is the same monitor, but it does have some differences. Namely being on this one, there is a little button. This exits the menu or goes back one. It can also change your input, and I really like that. I think this is a much higher quality option. The other thing I've noticed is the build quality on this is much better than the last one. I think the ports look ever so slightly different, and I haven't had any issues with the HDMI on this one. This works absolutely fine with the RG35XX SP and other HDMI devices. I think just the biggest differences between this is just mostly the build quality and that extra button to exit the menu. In terms of panel, well, these are exactly the same. I haven't noticed any quality differences between this and the other one. Colors and everything else look exactly the same, so they're definitely using the same panel on both of these. The metal on this one though feels way more solid. It doesn't feel as hollow anymore, and this just feels much more sturdy overall. These are also labeled on the back, and we have that same vase style mount on this one as well. It does have a matte coating to it, which does resist fingerprints decently, but it will still show some. As soon as I plug the power in on this one, it immediately powers up. I'm using the same setup I did last time, so I have their included cable and I have that going off to this U-green adapter. This is going into the SP. As soon as I plug it in, the screen goes black on the SP. It takes a few seconds and that immediately starts up. Everything seems to work fine, and even the brightness settings are being retained. The reason they are though is a little different. There's a mode option down here called FPS. You can change this between all the different settings. If you use standard mode, which is the user set mode, these options won't stay the same. You're going to have to reset these each time. This is really good if you're using this monitor as like a secondary monitor on your PC, because that's always going to be connected to the power. If you're using this with portable devices like I am, I just highly recommend using a preset option. I like to use this game option because it turns the panel very bright enough to get some good color, but it also makes the screen extremely responsive, so you're not going to have any issues with input latency on this. Let's just load up a game on here. There's way too many. Might as well load up the first video game I've ever played. I owned a Genesis as a kid, and Sonic was the first game I actually played, so I have lots of nostalgic memories with this. I don't really notice any difference between the speakers on this either. They sound the same on both units. The only thing about game mode is it limits the brightness to 30%, which isn't super bright, but it is usable. FPS mode seems even brighter, and the responsiveness is pretty good too, so I'd probably use FPS mode. Something that I'm noticing about this one though is you can't turn down the volume just by pressing the down button on it like we could on the other model. You actually have to control that natively on the device itself. If I press down on this, that just immediately opens up the brightness menu. We can also fix this aspect ratio too by loading up that menu again, then just scrolling down to the second one, clicking on aspect, setting that from auto. It goes 16 by 10, 4 by 3, 16 by 9, or automatic. Find which one works best for you. 16 by 10 doesn't look too bad, but 4 by 3 also looks really good. This is probably going to be the most accurate for the system. It's pretty neat actually to see the Sega Genesis pixel style shader on the screen because it gives it more of a nostalgic look. But yeah, for your portable gaming, this is a pretty nice screen. I really don't have many complaints with it. Build quality is like leagues above the other one. This is like a hard metal and it's extremely solid. Their customer service has been really good too. I mean, take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, as I'm a content creator, I'm hoping that their user experience is this good as well. When I had issues with the HDMI on my first one that they sent over another one, no questions at all. And the second one has been great so far. The last thing I want to talk about was this stand. It is a pretty good stand and the magnet is pretty strong on it, especially this other version that they've sent me because it feels like thicker metal. You have these two notches on the bottom. The screen would effectively sit in this little notch down here. Then you can fold this over and that stops it from sliding forward. This gives you a really good angle and it also makes sure that it's not going to go anywhere. They also kept the stand thin enough that it still doesn't really add much to the overall footprint of the monitor. With devices like the Odin 2 and the Odin 2 Mini getting ever more powerful, Android gaming is becoming more relevant all the time. This makes full AAA gaming, like with Wreckfest here on Android, completely possible, and I think screens like this definitely add to the overall experience. This sure looks and feels really smooth, especially with powerful devices like the Odin 2 or the Odin 2 Mini and the ROG Ally. Have you guys ever used a portable monitor before? As this is my first experience with one, I think it's pretty cool, but I'm always curious to hear what you guys think about it. Whatever panel UPERFECT use in here, it's absolutely fantastic. I love how bright and vibrant this is. In my personal opinion, if you're in the market for a portable monitor, I think it's highly worth considering this one. The panel's excellent, and I really like this matte display. It helps cut down on a lot of glare. This is very relevant, as if you were sitting outside, if you were camping and you put this out on like a table or something, there's going to be a little bit of light. My lights here are kind of simulating that, and it's still pretty decent. Overall, I think I'm pretty impressed with it. If you've got a really good Android device, I highly recommend picking up this game too. Wreckfest has just been awesome so far. What do you guys think of the screen? I personally really like it, and I think they did a good job, especially on this replacement one. Make sure to use the coupon code K40 if you want $40 off your order if the order is over $200. I'll leave that coupon code and a link down below in the description if you're interested in picking up this monitor. As for me, I think this is the best portable monitor that I've tried so far because, well, it's the only one I've tried so far, but it is a really nice screen and I think you're going to absolutely love it. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.